If you ever feel out of control around food, you're not alone, and you're in the right place to learn practical, no-nonsense information about why you binge and how to stop. Binge eating does not mean that something is wrong with you. It's a natural but primitive brain response that you can correct. If you're ready for change, sign up for the Brain Over Binge self-paced online course for less than $20 per month. And if you feel you need personalized support, we also offer one-on-one coaching and group coaching. To learn more, go to brainoverbinge.com/subscribe. And I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to the Brain Over Binge podcast, where you learn a simple brain-based approach to ending binge eating. I'm your host, Katherine Hansen. If you're new to the show, I want to welcome you today. I hope that you find this podcast helpful and empowering. My goal here on this podcast is to give you some simple, practical guidance that you can use to end the binge eating habit. Today is the Q&A episode. The question I have for today is from someone I'll call Tay. Tay said, "Thank you so much for your help already. I understand my binges in a totally different way now. I'm just wondering how I can go about reducing my binges after or during a holiday. I'm often too scared to go away for the weekend, and particularly to wear bathers, as I'm scared it will trigger an urge as I compare myself to my friends." Thanks for this question, Tay. I think it's important to talk about because sometimes people start doing really well when they're in their normal routine and at home and eating what they normally eat, but then they're worried about disrupting that routine and worried that if they do something different, they might binge. And it sounds like that's the case for you as far as going away on a holiday, and for some of the other listeners, it might be going on a long vacation or a business trip. I believe it's very important to learn to deal with these type of situations that are outside of your normal routine, because the whole point of recovery is so that you can live your life. You definitely don't want to feel like you have to be doing this one set routine in order to avoid binges, because that's very limiting and it doesn't give you the freedom that you want. I'm going to give you a few things to think about when it comes to holidays and other times when you're outside of your routine. And this applies to during the holiday or vacation or business trip or afterward as well. My first tip is to remember that no matter where you are or what you're doing, all you have to do as far as recovery is dismiss the urges to binge and eat adequately. If you're a regular listener, you know that those are the two recovery goals of this Brain Over Binge approach that I talk about on the podcast. Those two recovery goals do not change when you're away from home or when you're engaging in activities that you don't normally engage in. It may be easy for you to think that you need to do something special for different situations. And even though I think there definitely is value in being prepared, and I'll talk about that a little more later, you ultimately are just trying not to binge, and also you're trying to eat enough to support your efforts not to binge. You don't need to make things overly complicated, whether that's during the holiday or when you return home. As it relates to the situation you described, Tay, about wearing a bathing suit on a holiday, I'm not sure if this is the case for you or not, but you may be thinking that you need to build up your self-confidence before the trip so that you can try to avoid those negative body image thoughts and maybe avoid the urges that tend to come up when you have those negative body image thoughts. Or maybe you think you might need to avoid wearing a bathing suit altogether, or even avoid the trip altogether. But I believe it's important to remember that no matter how you're feeling about yourself or your body and where your confidence level may be, you can always dismiss an urge to binge. And the same applies to the second recovery goal of eating adequately. No matter how you're feeling about your body, or no matter if you're comparing yourself to others or not, you can always avoid restrictive dieting. You can always eat enough food to support your recovery. Now, I also want to say that learning to not be so critical of your own body is definitely a helpful skill. It just helps in living a better life. But it's not a skill that's developed overnight. You may want to listen to episode 40, which was titled Body Image and Binge Eating, just for some tips surrounding that. But just know that your body image may fluctuate throughout your life, and you don't want your ability to binge or not binge to be contingent on how you feel about your body. My second tip for you, Tay, is to visualize or mentally rehearse difficult situations, and also possibly make plans for eating adequately when you think it's necessary. So for you, Tay, if you know that binge urges tend to arise when you feel bad about your body, you can try to imagine putting yourself in that situation, just all in your head, just mentally rehearsing. You can imagine having those negative body thoughts. You can kind of imagine yourself having an urge. Although you can't fully create that urge feeling, you can kind of see yourself having that urge. And then, most importantly, you can imagine dismissing that urge and being successful at avoiding a binge, even when you're feeling negative about your body. Like I said, learning to build up your self-confidence is great, but no one is going to feel great about their body at every moment. And it's important to feel your own power to avoid a binge, even when you're having those negative body thoughts, or even when you find yourself comparing yourself to others, or even when you're in some sort of other difficult situation, whether that's on a holiday or when you return home. And if you're someone who struggles with restrictive dieting, you can also visualize yourself being successful at eating adequately in difficult situations and in situations where you may have formerly been tempted to restrict. I just want to take a quick pause and mention here that, as I've said in the past couple shows, I will soon have coaching audios, and a big part of the purpose of these coaching audios is to help you mentally prepare and visualize success in accomplishing both recovery goals of dismissing urges and eating adequately. So no matter where you are, no matter if you're home or away, on a business trip, on a holiday, you can have these audios available to help you stay focused in recovery. I just wanted to break and mention that here as I'm talking about visualizing and mentally rehearsing, because the audios can be a valuable tool to help you toward those goals. Now, getting back to Tay's question, Tay, I also said that you can make plans for eating adequately, and I think that is important when you're out of your normal routine. If when you're on a holiday, you can know generally where and when you'll be having your meals and you'll be having your snacks, it can help you feel more secure knowing that you aren't going to let yourself get too hungry, which, especially in the early phases of recovery, can be a setup for that survival drive to binge. If you're going to be with others, which is often the case on holidays and business trips and vacations, and therefore you're not going to be in full control about when and where you'll be eating, then I think it can be helpful to bring some snacks with you or go to the grocery and make sure you keep some food wherever you'll be staying so that you'll have something to eat when you're hungry. My third and final tip is to allow for flexibility and know that you do not have to be perfect, whether that's on the holiday itself or when you return home and you're exhausted. It's very common on vacations and trips when people are out of their normal routine for them to eat differently as well. And typically, in this case, differently means more unhealthy foods and possibly more in quantity as well. If you're like most people, Tay, you may eat out in restaurants more often than usual on holidays and probably have fast food or convenience food more than you do when you're at home and have access to your own kitchen. I want you to know that none of this means you're binge eating or that you're doing something wrong in recovery. Eating fast food or convenience food or delicious indulgent food at a restaurant is not the same as binging, unless, of course, you are binging on those foods. But I believe you know the difference in your own life between eating those foods in a way that a normal eater may eat them and binging. Also, in regard to accepting imperfection, is know that you don't have to be perfect when it comes to body image either. If you have negative body image thoughts, it doesn't mean you cannot end the binge eating habit. Feeling great about yourself in a bathing suit is not a requirement for recovery. Tay, I hope that those 3 tips help you and that they help anyone else who may be concerned about going on an upcoming holiday or vacation or business trip. I hope that my discussions on today's show were helpful to you, and I hope anyone listening who may be facing similar issues can use some of what I said as well. I really appreciate everyone who has joined me today. Remember that if you're interested in those coaching audios, go to the show notes and you can get on the list to be notified when they're available, and everyone who is on that list will also get a special discount when the audios are ready. And like I mentioned earlier in the show, if you're new to the Brain Over Binge approach, you can also go to the show notes, subscribe to that newsletter, and that will also get you the free ebook, The Brain Over Binge Basics. And in that ebook, you'll learn why you binge, and you'll also get started in learning how to end this habit. Thanks again for listening and for your commitment to recovery. I want to encourage you and remind you that you have the power to change your brain and live a binge-free life. The Brain Over Binge podcast is produced and recorded by Brain Over Binge Recovery Coaching, LLC. All work is copyrighted by Brain Over Binge Recovery Coaching, LLC, and all rights are reserved. As a disclaimer, the hosts of the Brain Over Binge podcast are not professional counselors or licensed healthcare providers, and this podcast is not a substitute for medical advice or any form of professional therapy. Eating disorders can have serious health consequences, and you are strongly advised to seek medical attention for matters relating to your health. Please get help when you need it, and good luck on your journey. Need more help? You can find all of our current and upcoming options for support at brainoverbinge.com.